And may God bless the gospel reading this morning. Amen. And please be seated. I think it's my turn now. I think it's... Anyway, there's a theological word that describes what we just witnessed this morning. It's a word, and it's called wow. What a great way to begin the service. Wow. So glad that the choir is visiting us today. Membership forms you can find in your pew in the back there. Just sign them in. Have you every Sunday. In the beginning, the earth was formless and void, Genesis tells us. And the Spirit of God hovered over the water. The water was dark, deep, and everywhere. Then God formed the land and the rivers and the mountains and the canyons and the plains, and with a profound, eternal sigh, the Spirit created life. A river ran through the Garden of Eden, where Adam went trout fishing. In the story of Noah, the floods came and washed the world away. God wanted to start over. The oceans had monsters. The rain produced crops. Wells were dug. The upper Paleolithic man began to bathe, to which Paleolithic woman said, "Thank heavens, it's about time." The prophets talked about a future with promise, where justice would roll down like a river, and goodness like an overflowing stream. King David wrote, "Wash me with the pure spiritual waters, and I will be clean, whiter than snow." We don't want to talk about snow right now. With water, Jesus cleansed the disciples' feet. He ministered to those society labeled unclean. And one night, he took a stroll upon an angry sea, totally freaking out Peter and the disciples who were in the boat. Jesus spit and made mud and applied it to a man's eyes. Jesus wept. After Pilate washed his hands of him, God hung upon a cross. Jesus got thirsty. He died. Blood and water flowed from his side. Like Jonah, he got swallowed up for 3 days. Then God beat death, rose from the depths, and breathed air once again. And when he found his friends, his disciples on the shoreline, he told them not to be afraid, but to go out into the world and baptize with water. The Spirit of God that once hovered over the waters now dwells in us. Fantastic. In the old days, new Christians, adults, after a long period of fasting and study, were baptized on one day of the year, Easter morning. They entered the church stark naked. I used to have a recurring dream about being in high school. I guess you have too. After baptism, our ancestors were given white robes, kind of like the one I'm wearing, and anointed them with oil. And then they were prayed for. And then they participated in their very first communion, their first Holy Eucharist, which means thanksgiving. And they were welcomed into the community. Then they had an Easter egg hunt. No, they didn't do that. Going under the water symbolizes a surrender, a death to the old way of living. Then, when we emerge, it's kind of a resurrection, a starting over, just like with Noah. Martin Luther described his baptism as a drowning of his old sinful self, which he noted was a mighty good swimmer. When we rise out of the water, we are named. Baptism is naming. It's naming. When Jesus emerged out of the river Jordan, while he was dripping wet, a heavenly voice immediately declared, "This is my Son. I love him." And everybody went like this. It was God's voice, but they couldn't see God. Baptism isn't when God starts to love us. Baptism simply names it. We are identified as a beloved son or daughter of God, welcomed as you are into this beautiful, wild, diverse, big loving mama, dysfunctional family we call the church. Then we stand. We'll stand up here today and we'll renounce Satan and evil and sin and death. And whether you believe in devils or not isn't the point. The point is, these dark forces of life, hate and greed and jealousy and lust and pride and fear and addiction and guilt, they can try to lay claim over your identity to convince you that you belong to them. They think they have a right to name you. And they can take the form of devils, of demons who taunt us. You're a failure. You're a weakling. You're worthless. You're a fake. You're a loser, a screw-up. So give up. But this is not God's voice. And if you can't see it today, then hear it. God names you forever. Beloved, my child, accepted, whole, valued, graced, blessed, saved forever. And no one can take it away. You are God's beloved. And I renounce anything or anyone who says otherwise. This is the victory. This is the overcoming. This is God defeating them. This is Easter. This is baptism. This is church. And this is the great secret of life. To take God's name for you and to live it out and believe that you are beloved. So let's get to it. Amen. Can I have the candidates come forward, please?